Today I'm finally addressing the NAR settlement lawsuit and what has taken place. As you know, if you've watched the news recently or even been on the internet, that everyone is talking about how 6% commissions are finally being slashed and sellers no longer have to compensate a buyer's agent. Now let's start by saying 6% commissions may or may not be the norm. I wouldn't know. And I know that a lot of agents in our market here in Bozeman don't necessarily charge the 6%. So that is an agenda in terms of advertising set up by the news sources. It's not necessarily a set amount. It's negotiated between a seller and their real estate agent. And the information that people are seeing in the news right now is not even close to what is actually happening in that settlement agreement. I'm not even sure that these news sources have read the settlement agreement. I think they came up with an agenda that they wanted to share, but I'm pretty sure it was the New York Times or Wall Street Journal that mentioned that 6% commissions are a thing of the past and buyers are on their own. When in fact, none of this has been set in stone because the courts still need to approve on the settlement. So things may not change. But in the meantime, here's what we know. Commissions will need to get removed if this is court approved by July from the MLS. Buyer broker agreements will be required very, very quickly before we even really get to know each other. So it's probably a good idea to start visiting open houses or maybe ask a real estate agent that you're going to want to work with to coffee so that you can understand how they operate, or set up a phone conversation or a Zoom call so that you make sure that if you do have to pay this real estate agent, that you like them, that you know them, that you trust them, and they're going to negotiate on your behalf to the best of their ability. I think long are the days gone where you're really gonna want your best friend that watches HGTV on the weekends and highlights as a ski instructor to help you if you're going to have to pay them and they only do 1 to 3 transactions a year. You're gonna want that high producer that knows the business in and out and that has the support to be able to help you. Secondly, the only big difference right now is that commissions are leaving our MLS. Guess what? The settlement agreement says that we can advertise commissions to the public on our websites for our office listings. So consumers are going to be able to see what we're paying people if anything's negotiated between a buyer and a seller on our office websites. It's just leaving the MLS. We're also going to be able to put it in other programs that are associated when we're setting up showings, so we might know. Now, we're gonna have to be a little bit more upfront for it, and there's a chance that you might have to pay a buyer's agent to represent you. But on the flip side, let's say that we have a set commission. I'm just gonna throw out a random number since this is the random number that the news is running with. Let's say that commission is 6%. And let's say Mr. Seller says, hey, I don't wanna pay the buyer's agent's commission anymore. Well, you're going to reduce your buying pool because not every buyer in this market can currently afford homes when somebody else is paying the buyer's agent's fee. And let's say now you're asking for the buyer who can barely afford to enter to the market to now pay the buyer agent fee. Well, you just push them out of home ownership. So your buyer bucket shrunk. And if the seller offers the buyer agent commission, they widened the buyer pool. That's number one. Number two is, it's going to get a little difficult if you have a buyer broker agreement with a buyer and the seller is not offering a seller's commission or a buyer's agent commission, and that buyer can no longer purchase your home because they cannot afford it, and they can't go directly to you necessarily either unless the courts figure that out because they have a buyer broker agreement. So again, your buyer pool has shrunk. The buying agent commission has always widened your buyer pool. It's also reduced your liability as a seller. And why do I say that? We are one of the most litigious countries that I know of in the world. And people always say that if you go to Australia, which Housing Wire has a great video on this, and I've got it here.
So it's probably going to be more like 3 to 4%. And also it's common as you get up in value that the commission rate will be stepped down. So companies will often have a policy starting at like 3 or 4, and then once you get over $1 million, it'll be more like 2 and that kind of stuff. We used to ask for 1% as a marketing fee upfront, write us a check, give us a credit card before we even listed the property. So that would be in addition to the commission. So there's marketing fees, there's photography fees, which we don't charge in the US. You have the fee, and maybe you charge a bit more commission depending on the extent of the marketing you do.
But as you can see, they chat in depth about how if you go to Australia, they have less commissions, but they also have attorneys that handle most everything. And after it goes under contract, they really don't have much interaction with the rest of the contract. So you're paying 2 or 3 or 4% in Australia, but you're also paying a percentage for an attorney, you're paying for other portions of the contract, and it's truly a buyer beware, not as litigious of an area. Here locally, I know that there was a lawsuit where somebody sued a real estate agent because there was a fire in the area, a natural disaster, and they were not warned that that could happen. So if that can happen with a fire in the area that is just a freak accident and a real estate agent gets sued, you're probably going to see more lawsuits from unrepresented buyers, because that selling agent, your real estate agent as a seller, is there to represent you, and they will do everything they can to manipulate that transaction in your best interest, and not because they're a bad guy to the buyer, but because they only work for you. So that can put you in sticky situations. Whether or not things are disclosed, there might be issues right before closing where buyers don't want to close because they realized what happened and they weren't fully knowledgeable. Maybe you're going to see an attorney on the other side of the transaction, but I can tell you a lot of real estate agents are not going to do 3% or 4% commissions for half of the transaction if they're now having to write the buyer agent forms, they're now having to go to every single showing because you don't want the buyers to pay a buyer's agents because there's not enough buyer's agents that want to show your property, because you're not paying a buyer agent commission, and now they're going to the inspections, the buyer walkthroughs, and everything else under the sun for that buyer. So if you think about it, like if you're getting divorced and you have an attorney that's now doing both sides of the forms because the other party doesn't have an attorney, the fee is not going to stay the same. There's going to be potentially increased costs. And yes, you are going to see some people out there cutting commissions, most likely in the beginning because they're scared, but those are also the same agents that are probably doing 1 to 3 transactions a year and don't know exactly what they're doing to begin with. I know our industry has a really bad rap.
Oh, but Murph, real estate agents are the worst. They're scumbags. They're good for nothing, unnecessary, blood-sucking.
I know that everybody and their brother is a real estate agent right now, literally everybody and their brother. So I think that our industry could use a good house cleaning, but basic economics has always been the deciding factor on housing costs. It has not been real estate agents. I can tell you that I have seen for sale by owners sell at the same price. Not always. I mean, NAR does have a statistic that they do sell for less, but that's because they don't have access to all the information and the mass buyer pools. But they're going to try and still get as much money as possible, especially if they're paying a real estate agent. So I don't foresee housing prices go down. That is to be determined. But basic economics has always been the deciding factor on housing prices. Here locally, we have a housing shortage for years and years and years. That's why our prices are so high. And that's why there's so many high prices across the country. The whole country has been at a shortage for a long time. So if housing is low and there's more buyers than there are houses, bidding wars take place. So I just caution you, with everything that you are seeing out there, don't believe the news. They have unfortunately taken a narrative and run with it. And everything is to be decided. The settlement is not set in stone, but you can guarantee, if everything is agreed upon, that you will be told that you have to sign a buyer-broker agreement very, very quickly upon wanting to view a home. We are not supposed to do it at the time of offers. We're not supposed to show you the forms. We are supposed to have a client agreement in hand. And yes, there could be some variation of this based upon what actually takes place. Commissions paid to buyer's agents are not set in stone, so pick wisely because you might have to pay for your buyer agent. I would strongly suggest that you do the research and you make sure that you're comfortable with the person that you are hiring and that you are educated. In the event that you do have to pay them, you can look back 5 years down the way and you can feel really good about it and you feel like they fought for you. And number 3, this does not mean that the advertised 6% narrative that the news and other people came up with is going to go away, because the market has always said it. In soft markets, this can go the opposite direction where buyer's agents can potentially receive more money if we're in a depreciating market. I have been doing this 17 years and I've seen the ebbs and flows of the real estate market, and I know that this is just going to create a more open dialogue and hopefully get rid of agents that don't belong in our industry to begin with. I think that this could be a good reset, maybe not the right reset, because I do have concerns for first-time home buyers. I do have concerns for our veterans who donate and dedicate so much of our lives to their country, and those groups generally have creative financing programs that don't require them to have a ton of money with their down payment. So I hope we figure out a solution for that if for some reason there is buyer agent representation reduced. But I can tell you from looking at the settlement agreement and looking at what National Association of Realtors has provided us, that the picture painted in the media is not necessarily a representation remotely of what I am seeing in these documents. And these documents are convoluted, but we have it for you to take a look at. We'll provide a link for you in the thread below. And I so encourage you to reach out to us, even if it's for coffee, to learn about what is potentially going to take place and know that it's going to take time. This could be a year before we really truly figure out how it's going to affect our market overall. And I just want you to know that we're here to talk to you. We'd like to educate you. And I really hope that this does not scare you into home ownership and seem like another daunting obstacle that you have to get through, whether you're a seasoned buyer or you're a brand new buyer, because it looks like it's mostly semantics, but it does look like you might have to make some better choices on who's representing you because you might be paying for them. So again, if you have questions, please reach out. We'll have our contact information below. And don't forget to like, follow, and share our pages. Tamara Williams with Tamara Williams & Company.